What if everything you're searching for is the very thing that's keeping you lost? It sounds impossible, doesn't it? But what if I told you that the moment you stop chasing happiness, it quietly walks toward you? That the peace you've been hunting for years is sitting quietly in a place you've forgotten to look, inside your stillness? Let me ask you this. Have you ever wanted something so badly, a relationship, success, healing, that it consumed your every thought, only to feel more empty than ever when you finally got it? Why does that happen? The truth is, most of us are stuck in a beautiful illusion. We think the next thing, the next achievement, the next lover, the next breakthrough will finally complete us. But Zen teaches us something radically different. Needing nothing attracts everything. I know that sounds upside down. We live in a world that rewards striving and chasing. But in the quiet teachings of Buddhist wisdom, there is a different path. One that doesn't ask you to run faster, but to pause. Not because you're giving up, but because that's the moment everything finally begins to arrive. In this video, we'll explore a truth so ancient, so healing, that if you hear it, you'll never look at your life the same way again. Take a deep breath, and let's begin. 1. The silent desert within. Why desire leaves us thirsty. Have you ever run so long towards something, only to realize it was never really there? Picture this, a traveler wandering a vast, sun-scorched desert. Their lips are cracked, their steps heavy, their eyes locked on the horizon. In the distance, a shimmering oasis flickers, always just out of reach. They keep walking, hoping, chasing, but no matter how far they go, the water doesn't come closer. We've all been that traveler. We think, if I just work a little harder, if I just get this person to love me, if I just lose 10 more pounds, then I'll feel whole. And yet, the more we chase, the more the oasis fades. What started as a dream becomes a burden. The wanting begins to ache. Desire, when unexamined, becomes a mirage. And like a mirage, it pulls us away from the present moment, the only place where peace ever truly lives. In Zen, there's a saying, the tighter you grip, the less you hold. The mind, when full of craving, cannot see clearly. It projects illusions, and those illusions of success, of validation, of control, whisper promises they can't keep. When we desire too much, we lose our center. The nervous system becomes agitated, the breath shallows, and the body stiffens. We begin to live in a state of low-grade panic, constantly scanning, calculating, comparing. It's like walking through life on tiptoes, afraid to miss the thing we think will finally make us enough. But here's the twist. The more we want something desperately, the more we tell the world and ourselves that we don't have it, that we are not it. And in that vibration of lack, we push it away. I've lived this. There was a time I was fixated on fixing myself. Every self-help book, every course, every new routine was born not out of inspiration, but out of a deep fear that I was broken. I thought I needed to earn healing, to chase it, to conquer it like a mountain. But the healing never came, not until I sat still, not until I stopped. There's a strange alchemy that happens in the pause, when we stop grasping. In that stillness, the fog begins to clear, the heart slows, and like the desert traveler who collapses into the sand, we finally feel the cool wind we've been too frantic to notice. We hear silence, we feel breath, and suddenly we realize we are not dying, we are waking up. The truth is, stillness isn't empty. It's full of everything we truly need. And there's a secret here. one that may sound mystical, but is deeply real. When you stop needing it so badly, the universe feels safe to give it to you. Why? Because you are finally in a space to receive, not with clenched fists, but with open palms. We attract what we are, not what we chase. So if we live in a state of frantic lack, we only mirror that chaos back to ourselves. But when we breathe, soften, trust, we invite in something gentler, something that was always there but couldn't land in our noise. The traveler didn't find the oasis by force. It appeared when he stopped walking. That story may sound poetic, but it holds practical truth. Slowing down regulates the body. It opens the heart. It shifts our chemistry. And when our body feels safe, the mind softens its grip. We begin to sense what we've always had, a sense of enoughness, a quiet joy, a grounded presence. Of course, the ego hates this. It thrives on next. It whispers, "Don't sit down. Don't let go. You'll lose everything." But that voice is not the truth. It's programming, and you are not your programming. Now let's not pretend that letting go is easy. The mind will panic. The fear will rise. But every time you stop chasing, even for a moment, you reclaim a part of your power. You stop the cycle of desperation. You remember that you were never lacking, only distracted. And that is where healing begins. Let's move now into the deeper layers of this wisdom and explore why letting go isn't just peaceful. It's the very act that opens the gates of abundance. 2. The sacred power of letting go. Why does letting go feel so terrifying, even when holding on is what's hurting us? We cling to plan, to people, to pain. Even when we know it exhausts us, there's a strange comfort in holding on, like clutching a rope that's burning our hands, but fearing the fall if we release it. But here's a gentle truth that may change how you see everything. Letting go is not the end, it's the beginning of receiving. Let's look at this through a different lens. In Zen, there's a teaching that says, the tighter you close your hand, the less you can hold. Think about that for a second. A clenched fist can't receive, only an open palm can, and our hearts, they work the same way. Clinging is often a disguised fear, the fear that if we let go, we'll be left with nothing. But in the stillness of release, we often discover we've been full all along. The spaciousness we fear is where peace begins. I remember once holding tightly to a friendship that had run its course. I kept trying to fix it, to return to what it once was. The more I tried, the more disconnected I felt. Not just from them, but from myself. And then, after months of painful attachment, I let it go. Not with anger, but with breath. And in the silence that followed, I felt light. Sad, yes, but peaceful. For the first time in a long while. That's when I truly understood. Letting go doesn't mean losing. It means choosing freedom. Now you may wonder, what's happening inside us when we release attachment? Let's soften the language and explore gently. When we hold on too tightly, our bodies go into subtle fight-or-flight mode. The nervous system becomes agitated. The breath becomes shallow. The mind begins rehearsing, repeating, and overthinking. It's like running a program in the background of your consciousness, constantly draining your energy. But when we let go, even for a moment, something shifts. The nervous system settles. Heart rate slows. Brain waves soften into calm. That's not just poetic. It's the body's response to surrender, a return to inner safety. And in this state of ease, something beautiful happens. We begin to attract clarity, synchronicity, and healing. Not because we're trying harder, but because we're no longer resisting. Letting go aligns us. Like a leaf surrendering to the current of the stream, it doesn't need to swim. It just allows itself to be carried, and it arrives where it's meant to go. Ironically, the more we surrender, the more life responds. Not because we demand, but because we trust. It's as if the universe had been waiting patiently for us to stop fighting, so it could finally give us what we're meant to receive. Now here's the twist that surprises many people. Letting go is not passive. It's not sitting around doing nothing. It's the most courageous act of faith. It says, I no longer force. I choose to flow. And from that choice, not weakness, but wisdom, we move into action that is inspired, not desperate. Funny enough, I once read somewhere, trying to force the universe is like yelling at a flower to bloom faster. It doesn't work. It only wears you out. But if you nourish the soil, soften the light, and wait and trust, it opens on its own, in its perfect time. That's what letting go is, trusting that the bloom is coming. Now, if you're holding something tightly right now, an outcome, a relationship, a timeline, I invite you not to shame yourself, but to gently ask, what would it feel like to release this, just for one breath? Because that's all it takes to begin. And when you do, you may notice something subtle. The pain eases, the mind clears, and quietly life begins to speak again. Letting go doesn't make you weak. It makes you ready. Ready to receive, to heal, and to move forward in peace. So if you're wondering, what do I do now? Stay with me, because next we'll explore how emptiness isn't something to fear, but something to trust. A sacred space where healing and creation begin. 3. The wisdom of the void. Why emptiness is not empty. Here's a question that may surprise you. What if the very emptiness you're afraid of is the doorway to your deepest healing? Let me say it plainly. We spend so much of life trying to fill the emptiness with noise, with people, with productivity. But what if that emptiness isn't the enemy, but the beginning of something sacred? In Zen, there's a word that whispers truth deeper than words can say, mu. It points not to absence, but to the fertile silence beneath all things. A place where being is not disturbed by becoming. Imagine a bowl. If it's already full of assumptions, of plans, of expectations, nothing new can enter. But an empty bowl, it holds everything. And yet, in our culture, we're taught to fear that space. We call it loneliness, failure, boredom. We rush to fill it with distractions. But emptiness, true sacred emptiness, is not a void. It is potential. It is pure openness. Let's get personal for a moment. I remember one winter morning after a tough breakup. My home was silent, the air felt cold, and the absence was unbearable. I had no one to talk to, nowhere to go, no next to chase. At first, I panicked. I tried to busy myself with tasks. I even ordered takeout I didn't need, just to feel full, but none of it worked. Finally, I sat by the window. I watched the clouds pass. I breathed. And in that moment of deep stillness, something shifted. I wasn't alone. I was here, alive, quiet, whole. Not because I added anything, but because I stopped trying to fill what was never broken. That moment was a turning point in my life. Here's why. The void is not lifeless. It is the womb of everything beautiful. It's where creativity is born, where insights emerge, where healing finally has space to arrive. Now let's gently reflect on what happens inside us when we allow stillness. When we stop forcing solutions and sit in the quiet, the brain shifts from high-frequency beta waves, the busy problem-solving mode, into alpha and even theta waves. This softens the inner dialogue. It opens the gate to imagination, memory, even subconscious wisdom. Ideas surface. The heart slows. Healing begins. It's no coincidence that most profound spiritual insights, from Buddha under the Bodhi tree to poets lost in nature, came not through striving, but through stillness. That's not magic. That's alignment. When you allow the silence to speak, the universe starts whispering back. But here's the twist. Most people never wait long enough to hear it. They peek into the void, feel the discomfort of not doing, and retreat into the noise. They miss the miracle. What if you stayed? What if just for today, you didn't fill the space and let it fill you? The ancient Taoist masters spoke of the eternal void as the birthplace of all things. Rumi called it the place where everything you lose comes back in a new form. The Buddha said it more simply, form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. And you're not meant to fear the void. You're meant to rest in it. In Zen, we are not taught to escape life. We are taught to see through its illusions. And the greatest illusion is that we need more to be whole. Emptiness shows us we are already enough. If you've been pushing, trying to fill the quiet with more effort, more self-improvement, more goals, this is your permission to pause. Sit with the void and watch how gently life begins to unfold around you, not as a reward for trying harder, but as a gift for trusting more deeply. Let me leave you with a small laugh. I once joked with a friend, I finally cleared my calendar and realized the scariest thing in the world is free time. We both laughed, but the truth underneath was real. We're afraid of open space because it leaves us face to face with ourselves. But here's what I've learned. When you stop filling your days with doing, you finally meet the part of you that's been waiting to heal. And that's the most sacred meeting of all. So, if you're ready to discover what can really grow inside you, we must move next into the mysterious art of effortless action, how to move through life with grace instead of force. Let's step into that together. 4. Effortless action, flowing with life without struggle. Have you ever wondered why the more you try to control your life, the more it resists you? It's a strange but familiar feeling, that tight grip on a plan, a person, or a goal, only to watch it slip right through your fingers. This is where we enter one of the most misunderstood spiritual truths. True action doesn't come from effort, it comes from alignment. In Zen, there's a term called Wu Wei. It's often translated as non-doing, but that doesn't mean doing nothing. It means acting in harmony with life, not pushing against it. Think of a river. When water flows, it doesn't argue with rocks. It doesn't try to bulldoze through mountains. It curves, it dances, it finds the path of least resistance and still reaches the sea. Now compare that to how we sometimes live. We clench our jaws. We overthink every step. We chase what doesn't want to stay. We burn out trying to prove we're worthy of rest. And then we wonder why nothing feels peaceful. But here's the twist. Peace isn't what you get after the struggle. It's what was available before the struggle ever began. Let me tell you a quick story. A few years ago, I was determined to grow a creative business. I had vision boards, schedules, checklists. I even wrote affirmations on my bathroom mirror. I told myself, if I hustle hard enough, it will happen. But the harder I pushed, the more things unraveled. Collaborations fell through. Burnout hit me like a wave. I couldn't sleep. I was snapping at people I loved. And one day I just stopped. I turned off all notifications. I deleted half my to-do list. and I walked to the park with no agenda. As I sat under a tree watching the leaves sway with the breeze, I suddenly realized I had been moving like a robot, not a human. And in that moment of stillness, something clicked. Ideas started flowing, not forced but inspired. Connections appeared, not chased but invited. And slowly life began responding to me differently because I was showing up differently. There's a psychology behind this too. When we operate in constant stress mode, our nervous system shifts into survival, fight, flight, or freeze. In this state, we can't think clearly, create deeply, or connect authentically. But when we shift into relaxation, presence, and openness, our brain changes. The frontal cortex lights up. Decision-making becomes fluid. Creativity awakens. We stop reacting. We start responding. And guess what? People notice. You become magnetic, not because you're chasing anything, but because you've become grounded in something deeper, your presence. This is the hidden power of effortless action. It's the reason some people seem to flow through life while others constantly wrestle with it. It's not about luck, it's about alignment. Now, I'm not saying don't work. This isn't an invitation to lie on the couch and expect miracles. But it is an invitation to work with life, not against it. Here's a lighthearted example. Have you ever tried opening a stubborn jar lid by forcing it only to make it worse? Then someone else comes along, taps the side, takes a breath, and it opens with ease. That's what alignment feels like. You're not forcing, but somehow things unfold. In the Tao Te Ching, there's a phrase I love. The Tao does nothing, yet leaves nothing undone. When we stop trying to control every outcome, when we move from presence instead of absence, life meets us halfway. And that's where the law of resonance begins to show its quiet magic. What you embody, you attract. What do you feel? You amplify. What you release makes room for what's meant to stay. So if you want more peace, become peace. If you want freedom, stop grasping. If you want things to move, stop pushing. And yes, that might sound like the opposite of what you've been taught. But sometimes it's the letting go, not the holding on, that brings us home. Let's bring this full circle. You don't need to hustle to be worthy. You don't need to struggle to earn peace. And you don't need to keep proving your value to a universe that already knows your name. When you move with life instead of wrestling it, you stop surviving and start living. And as we move forward, we'll explore how this way of being, this flowing, gentle trust, leads to a level of abundance that chasing can never reach. Let's walk into that next together. 5. Surrender and receiving, the doorway to inner wealth. Why do so many of us struggle to receive, even the very things we claim we want? We say we long for peace, love, rest, but when it arrives, we don't know how to let it in. We deflect compliments. We feel guilty when resting. We question our worthiness of love. It's as if the door is unlocked, but we've forgotten how to open it. In Zen, there is a simple truth that's hard to swallow. We do not receive because we do not surrender. Surrender, to the Western mind, often sounds like defeat, giving up, backing down, waving the white flag. But in Zen, surrender is not weakness. Its strength is refined by stillness. It is not collapsing, it's softening, not escaping, but arriving fully. The paradox is this: only when you stop grasping does your hand become open to receive. Let's anchor that with an image. Imagine a clenched fist. That's how most of us walk through life, gripping plans, outcomes, relationships, identities. But nothing can be placed into a closed hand. The act of opening, of relaxing your fingers, is what turns you into a vessel. Receiving is not about chasing, it's about clearing. It's not about asking harder, it's about trusting deeper. Here's where psychology lends a whisper. Many of us are unconsciously wired to equate control with safety. The more unpredictable life feels, the more tightly we hold. But that same tension keeps out the very joy we crave. It's like locking all the doors because you fear thieves, and in doing so, you also shut out the sunrise. You see, control may create the illusion of protection, but surrender creates the reality of peace. And here's where things twist beautifully. Most people think that letting go means losing something. But what if letting go is how we gain everything that matters? I once met an old man at a Zen retreat. He had lost his business, his marriage, even his health, and yet his presence was luminous. Over a cup of tea, he smiled and said to me, "Everything I thought was taken from me was gently removed, so I could return to what cannot be lost." I never forgot that. Because he wasn't grieving, he was grateful. He had surrendered not out of exhaustion, but out of wisdom. He had discovered a truth many never reach. Receiving is what happens when we stop demanding and start allowing. There's a subtle shift that takes place in our energy when we surrender. Our nervous system calms, our breath deepens, and the mind stops spinning long enough to recognize that life is already offering us what we truly need. Not always what we want, but always what we need. And that's the dance between desire and destiny. When you stop fixating on what must happen, you give life permission to surprise you. Sometimes what you receive will look nothing like what you pictured, but everything like what your soul needed. And this is where the real magic unfolds. When you stop chasing, you start magnetizing. You know those moments when someone walks into a room, calm, centered, not trying to impress anyone, and everyone is drawn to them? That's surrender at work. That's the resonance of someone who's no longer trying to convince life to love them, because they already do. And yes, there are moments when surrender feels scary, but ask yourself, what's scarier? Trusting life or living your whole life trying to outthink it? Here's my take. I used to think surrender was what you did when you had no options left. Now I see it as the highest form of intelligence. It says, I trust that I don't have to figure everything out alone. I am open to being guided. And when you live this way, you become light. Not because your burdens disappear, but because your relationship to them changes. You're no longer dragging your story like a suitcase. You're walking with it gently, like a companion. So how do you practice this in daily life? Pause before you react. Breathe before you respond. Let things unfold before labeling them as good or bad. And when in doubt, soften. Surrender is not a one-time act. It's a way of walking. It's choosing peace over proof, openness over outcome, trust over tension. And in that space, in that quiet widening of the heart, life pours in, not with fireworks, but with whispers. Let's carry that feeling into our next reflection. A truth that reveals how, in emptiness, we are more full than we've ever imagined. So let's gently return to the seed we planted at the very beginning. By needing nothing, we attract everything. Not because we've stopped caring, but because we've started trusting. Not because we've given up, but because we've surrendered to the deeper rhythm of life. Throughout this journey, we've explored how stillness reveals clarity, how letting go dissolves suffering, and how emptiness is not a lack, but a space for infinite possibility. We've walked beside the desert traveler who found the oasis only when they stopped chasing it. We've sat in the silence where the soul is finally heard. and we've learned to release the tight grip of control so our hands and hearts can finally receive. Now it's your turn to reflect. What are you ready to let go of today? What longing, expectation, or fear are you brave enough to surrender just for a moment? Let that be your practice, not tomorrow. Now, and if this message spoke to something deep in you, if you felt seen or softened or simply a little lighter, then take a breath and share this with someone who needs it. Comment below with one thing you're ready to release, and don't forget to subscribe, because this journey of healing, peace, and spiritual remembering is just beginning. You are not alone. You are already whole. And when you stop reaching, life reaches you.